Happy Thursday and welcome to another episode of Hornets Daily, your one-stop shop for all things Charlotte Hornets. As always, we're presented by the good people over at FanArc, and I'm your host, Vance Ballard, but you already know you can call me VB. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, watching along with us out there. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, leave a like and a comment down in the comment section. You guys know how much we like watching you interact down in the chat, hearing some of your thoughts on what's going on the program, and then getting to interact with you a little bit as well as we continue to grow and build this Hornets Daily family here on the program. Now, as you know, it is coming down towards the back end of August. Things are slowing down here in the NBA. It's still the dog days of summer, but that doesn't mean there's nothing on the docket. Still a few pieces buzzing around down in the Queen City, and we're going to bring it all to you right here on the program today. Las Vegas has released their championship favorites. They've put out the future odds for who they think is most likely to win the NBA championship, and you guessed it, folks, the Hornets are nowhere near the top of that list. We'll talk about where they did get placed and how I think that's a little bit harsh with who they've been grouped with in the rest in the NBA going in terms of their championship odds to win the whole thing this coming season. In what has been maybe the most late August piece of summer information that we have talked about on the show today, Sports Illustrated has taken it upon themselves to rank the offseason performances by division. So we'll talk about where they have the Hornets in terms of their offseason grades within the Southeast Division today on the show. And you know, one of my favorite things to do this summer has been to take a trip out to the old rumor mill. It's still hot and heavy, working hard this late into the summer. We'll talk about a brand new trade that we haven't mentioned yet on the show this summer today on the program. And then we'll finish with a topic about one of our favorite Charlotte Hornets, one of the most discussed members of the Hornets this offseason and every offseason, as a matter of fact. We're going to talk a little bit about LaMelo Ball and what the magic number for him may be in terms of games played to make the Hornets the most successful they can possibly be this season going forward. Now, you know, folks, we don't do beating around the bush here on Hornets Daily. We dive head first into the program, and that's exactly what we're going to do here today. It is a new day, and a new betting odd has been released with the Hornets being at the bottom of the barrel. Charlotte has tied, Vegas has Charlotte tied for the biggest long shot in the league to make the NBA championship. They are tied with the Nets, the Jazz, and the Wizards in that category. So once again, grouped with some of the bottom of the NBA teams, some of the if you will, the basement of the league, if you want to call it that. And if I'm being honest, I don't know that anyone thought any differently about this in terms of the Hornets' prospects to actually win the championship. I don't think anyone is going crazy thinking they should be higher a favorite on that list by any means. But I think it's a little bit unfair to group them with the rest of these teams in the NBA. The Hornets are in a very different spot than the Nets, the Wizards, or even the Jazz, as they are on that list of teams. They're by far the team who has the most optimism going into this season and into the future, to be honest. You have to assume that with all of that being said, Las Vegas feels that the Hornets are close to or equal long shots just to make the playoffs in that regard, and I think that part is a little bit crazy. I think the Hornets have a better chance than definitely the national media. I know obviously it's something we've talked about a lot. A lot of people close to the team or within the fan base feel like the Hornets have a pretty decent shot of making the play-in. If there was ever a time, this year is going to be that time. So I think that the Hornets being grouped with those bottom teams who realistically probably have no chance of making a playoff run, barring something crazy going on, I think putting the Hornets down there is kind of a surprise, a little bit unfair, a little bit unwarranted. Just kind of goes to show that what goes on in Charlotte is not national news by any means. The development, the improvement made on this roster has not been felt throughout the entirety of the NBA, but people like us within the fan base and close to the organization have a different sense of optimism, have a different thought about what's going to take place this season into the regular season. Now, I'm not anywhere close to saying that Charlotte can win the championship. I don't want to get crazy and think that at all. But I do think it's just wrong to group them with the rest of the bottom of the league, to put them in the same category as the Nets, the Jazz, and the Wizards, when I think the Hornets are going to be a much better team than all of those. Again, I've told you several times this summer, I think the Hornets are going to find a way to be successful, use the depth and the veteran pieces that they've added, and make a run towards the play-in. I think there is even a slight chance there is a world somewhere in which the Hornets can avoid the play-in and just get themselves a playoff seed in this very, very depleted, even thrift shop version, if you will, of the Eastern Conference that's going to be unfolding in this regular season. I think the Hornets this is one of their best chances to take advantage of that since LaMelo's first 2 seasons in the NBA when they did make the play-in. I think now this year they're poised to make a run at that shot again, but again, calling them to a team that could make a run towards the championship, that would be a little bit crazy. That would be a little bit wild. But they are going to be better than the Nets, the Jazz, the Wizards, the real bottom of the barrel, the basement of the NBA. The Hornets are going to get themselves out of that this year, propel themselves into a different category, more of the middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference, maybe even a little bit higher than that going forward. I think that's going to be where the Hornets are and how they're trending and what they're tracking to do this season. Now, again, we talked about it in the lead into the show. One of the more late August things that I have seen, it's the slow part of summer pieces of information that has come out at Sports Illustrated has ranked the off-season grades by division. So they have broken it down within the entire Southeast Division, and they have the Hornets ranking coming in as the second best offseason in that division, which you got to take. That's not too bad. We'll take all the wins we can get. Any of the positive love and appreciation is appreciated down in Charlotte. Mostly the Hornets were put in that second position just based off the value that they've got in the Colin Sexton trade alone, sending a declining Yusef Nurkic out to Utah for Colin Sexton and a 2029 first-round pick in return for that, or a future first-round pick in return for that. Was a steal that has been talked about. That part has made the national NBA media and has confused writers and experts and analysts all throughout the summer how the Hornets were able to pull off such a deal and get such a valuable player in Colin Sexton in return for somebody who probably is on the back end of his NBA career in Yusef Nurkic. Now, if you add that with turning the Mark Williams into Liam McNeely and a second-rounder from Phoenix, as well as the 3 other rookies drafted in this class, the promise that is Con Knippel, the optimism behind Ryan Kalkbrenner, and even the future prospect of Sion James, all of those combined together, and you can start to see really where some of the optimism surrounding this team and coming out of the fan base and see where that's coming from going forward into the future. Another very underrated move for the Hornets was the re-signing of Trey Mann, who was on pace, looking like he could get himself into the conversation for Sixth Man of the Year last year, as he was putting up close to 14 points per game before his injury. So being able to re-sign him and keeping him at a low number like $8 million a year, if he's able to return to form and even continue to develop and get better and become maybe someone who is in that, like I say, has worked himself into that Sixth Man of the Year conversation, then that would be a steal in itself, because he is, again, kept for a low value, just $8 million a year. Not to mention the veteran additions that the Hornets have made as well, guys like Spencer Dinwiddie, Pat Connaughton, and even Mason Plumlee, all being brought in to be veteran voices, real leaders in that locker room. Connaughton is a proven NBA champion. He knows what it's like to be on a winning basketball team. So if he is one to stick around this season for the Hornets, just his presence, that voice, that sense of knowing what it's like to be a winner in the league could help and go a long way, being around some of these young guys and helping them develop and get on the right track going forward in the NBA. So just those kind of additions can be underrated as well. Again, we talked about Spencer Dinwiddie yesterday or this week on the show and what he may bring to the table. The advantage just having him on the roster can have. If LaMelo goes down, he can play that position. If somebody needs a break or there's an injury at the 2 guard, then Spencer Dinwiddie can step in and production will not drop off with him on the floor. So those kinds of additions as well, they go a long ways towards improving what the Hornets have done this offseason and giving them a higher grade here according to Sports Illustrated within the Southeast Division. Now, SI did question Charlotte's decision not to make any big moves for a big man, no pun intended there, which is why they have them as the second best offseason in this division and not the first, which we know has been the biggest knock or the biggest critique or the biggest question mark from really everyone around the league about the Hornets this summer. Why didn't they go out and make any big moves and try to acquire a big man of the future? But as of late, as we know, as we've talked about several times on the program, everybody within the Hornets organization, Charles Lee, Jeff Peterson, the rest of the coaching staff, all of those guys like that, they seem to be becoming more and more confident in the big men that are currently on the roster. We heard Charles Lee talk with WFNZ about how important he thinks Mason Plumlee can be, about how he thinks that Ryan Kalkbrenner and Moussa Diabate can develop into centers in the NBA and play well, and how he is confident again in that group that he's got at the center position, in the 4s and the 5s, all the bigs as well. We've heard Charles Lee kind of put some of those concerns to rest, which should bring some confidence as well. So I don't know that it's as big of a critique or as big of an issue or as big of a knock against the Hornets as people think it is that they didn't go out and add a big name or do something crazy at that center position. They seem to be confident with what they have, and again, I'm willing to trust Charles Lee because I think he is the guy to turn this ship around here in Charlotte, and if he is confident in the centers that he's got, then I have to be as well. I think as fans, we can all take a little bit more solace and a little bit more peace and comfort in knowing that Charles Lee's confident in his big men, and we can feel that way as well. I know there's some of you guys out there in the chat who still think the Hornets need a big going forwards, but if Plumlee can fill that gap and Moussa Diabate and Ryan Kalkbrenner can turn into legitimate centers in the NBA, then that is something that the Hornets can benefit from greatly going forward. Now, ranking the off seasons by division, again, that is peak end of August, late in the off season, slow summertime activities. We know that. I've said it to start this off. I'll reiterate it. It is very much a slow period activity, but it is still nice to see the Hornets getting some love for their efforts and their moves they've made this offseason. Again, that's something kind of rare here in Charlotte. We don't see a lot of compliments based on what the front office has been doing, so it's nice to see that the new regime is still trending in the right direction, trying to change that culture here in Charlotte. As we know, that has been something that has been keyed on and focused on and said over and over again this entire offseason, this whole summer, really since the new regime has come in, and they are continuing to do things the way that, honestly, the way that we would hope and the way that it seems like it's going to be the most productive. Now, for one of my favorite trips out of the summer, we're going to take another vacation out to the rumor mill today. It does not stop, does not sleep here in the summertime, in the off season. A brand new hypothetical today in the mix, one we have yet to talk about. Now, you know, most of the other mock trades we've brought up here on the show have either seen Charlotte giving up too much on their end or just bordering on being straight ridiculous as a whole. We talked about a couple of those last week. This time, though, Zach Roberts over at Sports Illustrated is offering up a logical trade that could benefit the Hornets right away. Again, nothing crazy, not a super flashy, big-name trade by any means, but this is one of the more productive and actual realistic trades that we have mentioned on the program here. In this hypothetical, the Hornets give up Nick Smith Jr. and 3 future second-round picks. Now, I know it sounds like a lot, but it is just 3 future second-rounders, no first-rounders with any value to them. And they would receive back from the Golden State Warriors Trace Jackson Davis in return for all that. Now, again, you hear those names and you think, Vance, that's not very flashy. What's the point of that? What is that even helpful? I would argue yes. Now, we know that the Hornets have some depth at the guard position. Nick Smith Jr. is a guy we've mentioned several times on this program as someone the Hornets are more than likely going to move on from anyway. So getting something back in return for him would be nice, especially if that something is a piece like Trayce Jackson-Davis, who is not a superstar in the NBA by any means, but he is a proven player, and we know that he can bring some good things to the table. He could benefit this Hornets team pretty much right from the jump. Basically, instantly, he would add depth at the 4 position, which Charlotte could very much use. Now, I know I just talked about how Charles Lee and company are excited about the big men that they have, but bringing in someone who is known as an extremely efficient scorer and player at that big man position would be very beneficial and could help right away. Now, Jackson Davis, I mentioned about his efficiency. He is was amongst all NBA power forwards last year. He was the 19th most efficient player in the NBA. He was ranked 19th amongst all NBA fours in his player efficiency rating. Now, if you recall, that is the metric that was used and focused and keyed on the most when we talked about a few weeks back Miles Bridges being ranked the most overrated player in the NBA for the last 5 years. His player efficiency rating was cited several times, and he was not in the top 50 of the NBA, while a guy like Trayce Jackson-Davis again comes in at 19th overall amongst all power forwards. That is an improvement, and having somebody who can play efficiently on the floor around guys like LaMelo Ball, Colin Sexton, Brandon Miller, even if he's on the floor at the same time as Miles Bridges, someone who is more efficient with the basketball, with his scoring, with his overall game, could go a long ways towards improving and, again, adding some depth to this Hornets roster at the power forward position. Now, it would also offer a bit of a security blanket to that power forward position. Let's say if Tajon Salon or Musa go down, or they don't pan out and develop maybe quite the way we thought. Like if Salon does not look as good as he did in the Summer League, if for some reason he struggles like he did last season, having a guy like a Trayce Jackson-Davis, who we know that could go into that spot, could slip in, and the production not go down very much. He could give those young guys a break, maybe some time to get their minds right, to reset and start to develop from the bench again, as they watch and see a proven NBA player and what he can do and how he can be as efficient as he can be. Learn from him, pick his brain, get some knowledge, and then continue their own development. He does, again, bring a nice sense of security, an added security blanket if something were to go wrong at that 4 position. You have a guy who you know what you're going to get out of in Trayce Jackson-Davis. Now, obviously, this trade doesn't fix one glaring issue, which is the roster size problem. Moving one player and adding another does not change the number from 18 down any closer to 15. But that's a whole different issue that we'll keep an eye on, how the front office plans on adjusting and moving around that and getting that number to 15. But this is one of the more favorable trades that we have talked about, one of the more realistic ones, and I think I could get on board with this one as well, especially since those 3 future second rounders were really only acquired for a situation like this in which they could be used as extra additions to a trade anyway. And Nick Smith Jr. is already someone the Hornets are probably going to move on from. We've talked about that several times this summer. So if they could get something back, something valuable back in return for him, I think that would be a good move for the Hornets, something they should definitely take a look at. We'll keep an eye on that. But again, one of the more realistic and logical and honestly favorable trades that we've talked about coming out of the old rumor mill this summer. I like that one. I think we'll keep an eye on it and see where that pans out. But if that turns from a hypothetical to something that is realistic, I think that would benefit the Hornets quite a bit going forward. Now, we told you we're going to wrap today's show up talking about one of our favorite Charlotte Hornets, one of the most discussed players throughout the NBA, LaMelo Ball. The new question for the day is how many games, what's the magic number for LaMelo being on the floor to give the Hornets the most success going forwards this season and even further into the future? Now, we know not many days go by without LaMelo being brought up in one light or another, whether it be positive or negative, but we know the main point of focus is is always his health. Can he stay on the floor? He's going to start this season healthy. How long is that going to last? Is he going to be able to eclipse that 50, 60, 70 game mark? Something he is not used to doing. Has played less than 50 games in each of the last 3 seasons. Also, conveniently, the Hornets have missed the play-in or the playoffs in each of those last 3 seasons as well. Now, we know that LaMelo being on the court is crucial to the Hornets' success. Again, he having in the 2 seasons, his first 2 seasons that he did play over 50 games on the court, the Hornets were able to make the play-in in both of those first 2 years. So there is some connection there. There is what seems like a bit of a magic number. If LaMelo can eclipse that 50-game mark, the Hornets do seem to have a much better chance at success. They seem to be a better basketball team, which isn't a crazy thing to say. It's pretty obvious, if you ask me, that when the best player is on the floor, the team plays better. That makes the most sense, and that seems to be the case with LaMelo here in Charlotte. Now, we know that is a big ask. It's clearly not an easy thing to accomplish for LaMelo to stay healthy and eclipse that 50-game mark. But if the Hornets want to make the playoffs, or even the play-in, or even the playoffs, then it's going to be essential they do everything they can, LaMelo included, in this, to keep himself healthy, to keep him on the floor, to keep him playing at a high level and producing. Again, being a little bit more efficient in terms of passing the ball, not turning it over, and working on his shooting percentage, which I think all of those things he will benefit from what's been added around him this season. Speaking of what's been added around him, the good news is the Hornets have done a fantastic job building depth at the guard position, just in case something catastrophic with LaMelo does happen again. He has to miss some more time this season, goes down with another injury, whatever it may be. The Hornets have added guys who can come in and play that lead guard, that main one position. If LaMelo does have to miss some time, again, Colin Sexton, Spencer Dinwiddie, both more than capable of playing that position in the NBA, both more than capable of running and facilitating an NBA offense in the absence of LaMelo Ball. Trey Mann, KJ Simpson, also more than capable of coming in and getting some minutes at that point guard spot as well. So Charlotte did a nice job this offseason. We know about the logjam of guards that they have acquired. And so in preparation, honestly, for something bad happening to LaMelo, him going down. So if he does have to miss time, the guys behind him should be more than able to make up for a lot of his production. Shouldn't be too much of a drop-off if he does go out. But again, if you have your best player, you're going to want him on the floor. Pretty much any team in the NBA is going to say, yes, obviously, we would much rather prefer our best player be healthy than to be hurt. But it is always nice to have some depth, to have some pieces, especially some veteran pieces, sitting behind your starting point guard if something does go awry, or at this point, according to plan with LaMelo, as we have to almost prepare for him to get hurt and kind of schedule in some missed time for the Hornets' young star. Hopefully that's not the case this season and LaMelo can stay healthy. But with a good mix of veterans and young guys, Charlotte can be much more confident than they have been in a long time about their guard depth, about what they have on the court, on the bench, all the way throughout the roster. As a matter of fact, at that guard position, the Hornets can take some solace, can take some comfort in knowing that if things go wrong, if something bad does happen, there are guys to keep that production at a high level. But it's still going to make this season and future seasons much, much more fun, much easier on Charles Lee and company to keep LaMelo healthy, to keep him on the floor, let him mesh and connect with these new guys, let him mesh and connect a little bit with some of the veterans, guys like Colin Sexton, Spencer Dinwiddie that have been brought in. We've already talked at a pretty good length this offseason about the efforts that Sexton and LaMelo are taking to build their relationship, to connect a little bit, not just as teammates, but off the court as well. So having him available would go a long ways toward the benefit of the Hornets, would make them better, not just this season, but in future seasons as well, could allow for them to become a more consistent playoff team here in the NBA, keeping guys like LaMelo healthy, getting him to that 50-game mark, which seems to be the magic number, at least in his first two seasons. If he can eclipse that 50-game mark, then the Hornets should be feeling pretty good about what they've got going forwards. As I've mentioned a couple times today, I think this is a play-in or play-off team here in a very depleted Eastern Conference, but that is something we'll have to wait and see and keep an eye on. And that is going to wrap us up for today's show, folks. As always, thanks so much for watching along with us. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button. Leave a like and a comment down in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think about some of the stuff we talked about today on the show. Specifically, let me know what you think about that trade coming out of the rumor mill. Again, one of the least flashy or exciting or big name-filled trades that we've talked about, but I do think it's one of the more logical and reasonable trades. So let me know what you guys think down low in the chat. And please be sure to join us right back here tomorrow for another episode of Hornets Daily.